Good morning. Good morning, Olga. Let's see, and Bob.
Good morning.
Let's see, how we doing? Let's unmute Olga. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm awake. That's about as best I could. Well, Friday, I'm gonna say I've got some stuff done in the house, so I'm happy. Had a good couple days.
Oh, okay.
That should be better. Okay. If I take out the earphones out of the computer, I can actually hear you.
Oh, isn't that?
That might make a big improvement, right?
Hey, there you go. Education is a wonderful thing.
Well, yeah, just being awake enough, to kind of look around and see what's going on is really useful too. Yeah. Anyway, happy Friday. How's everybody doing?
Good. And
Good.
great difficulty getting in today.
That was my fault.
Okay.
Yeah, blame that on me. Yeah, the time slipped by and I was in the middle of trying to organize things, and before you knew it, I looked at the clock and it was actually after 10 o'clock. It was like, oh, better open that up. So I apologize for that. But hey, we're here. We made it. Okay.
Yep.
So happy Friday, everybody. Everybody doing okay?
Yes. Happy Good Friday.
Yes, happy Good Friday.
Happy Good Friday.
Yes. To answer somebody's earlier question about are we going to have a day off or anything, I just checked the Fulton County employee work calendar, and there's actually no holiday listed for Fulton County employees around Easter. Okay. So we don't have a Friday off. We don't have a Monday off. It's just you get Easter Sunday and that's it. But we do have Memorial Day coming up in May. Okay. And I think that's the next holiday that we have to deal with as far as either a Friday or a Monday having a class. Okay. Up until then, I think we're good. All right. So everybody got that?
Got it.
Okay. So question, I sent out actually several emails, but I sent one out that basically said that we were going to meet Anita Stewart on yesterday, but because of the cold, windy weather, we decided to cancel that and maybe put it off for a week because it should in fact be nicer next week. It's supposed to be back up in the 70s and 80s from what I understand. So did everybody get that?
Yes. No.
No?
No.
Good.
You didn't get the email?
Oh, I'll check again.
Okay, because I mean I sent it to everybody. Yeah, let me know if you're not getting
Okay.
that. Because yeah, what I didn't want to see is some of you standing around outside of Trader Joe's here, in the cold weather, waiting for us to show up. But yeah, I talked to her on Wednesday evening and we both kind of agreed probably better to put it off for a little bit since it is outdoors and plus it gave you guys another week. Did you get the original one, Rebecca?
I'm looking.
Okay. Yeah, because I sent it out to everybody and there's a flyer attached to it. And it gave the time, the date, and the location. Okay.
The last thing that I have from you is March 31st, the brush lady.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has she come and gone? Oh, no.
No,
Okay.
we put it off till next week.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just, if any of you need brushes, if any of you need paint sets, things like that, she started bringing quite a few things, particularly like pen and drawing sets, different paint, stuff like that she's got. And it's all like really discounted.
Wow.
All second. So it's usually about like, 50 or 60% of what you would pay retail. Okay.
Wow.
And there's really nothing wrong with any of this stuff. It's just all factory seconds. So the brush, the paint surface, when they manufactured it, may not have gone down perfectly or something, but it's a perfectly good brush. And
Where in Sandy Springs? At Trader Joe's?
if you open up that flyer, it will tell you. Yeah, it's at that Sandy Springs Shopping Center. It's where the old Pier 1. They've
Right.
right next to Trader
Right.
Joe's. They closed that Pier 1, so now it's just an empty storefront.
Wow, I didn't know that. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank
now we can go kind of hang out there, discreetly, and and people can kind of look through the brushes and stuff, and we're not in front of anybody's store bothering anybody, and it's generally a fairly easy place to get to, even if you had to take public transit, because there's a bus that stops right there in front of that shopping center. Okay.
Very
So,
good.
all right. Anyhow, so hopefully, just keep that in mind. We'll be out there next Thursday, and I'll remind everybody on Monday and Wednesday. But she's got a bunch of stuff, and I'll be out there. I'll probably show up at noon. She's going to start at about 12:30, and I'm going to show up there a little bit early to help her get stuff organized and set up and ready to go. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So now that that's out of the way, and I should have done this earlier. Let's go to, yeah, okay. Where did it go? Right here. Oh, okay. All right, yeah, that's the flyer I sent out. Okay.
Okay.
And this is the one with the corrected date, April 8th. Okay. And so you should find that in your email. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Found it.
All right. Other than that, let's see. Let's start looking at some stuff. Because I've got some things to share with you, show you. This is stuff that I've kind of gathered over the week. And there was some interesting stuff out there. Whoop. Okay. Wrong window. Okay. Does everybody see a drawing?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And it should say Basil down there on the bottom, right? Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I wanted to kind of, I may have shown these to you before. This is Basil Watson. And I just kind of wanted to, show you these sketches. And these are probably like, 2-3 minute long sketches. All right. And they're done with like ink and like pen line. Okay. And if I had to make a guess, all right, and I would, this is just speculation on my part, okay. My guess is that he started off with a brush and some India ink, and he actually started putting in sort of just those dark shapes and kind of positioning them where he thought they would be. And then he came back in with the pen line right after he did the brushwork. And the reason that I would say that is that if you look at how sort of the darks just lay down kind of loosely and they don't really conform to the line, right? That's kind of why I'm thinking he put those down first. And then he went back in and, he tried to be a little more accurate with the line. And some of the tones, the values and things fall outside of that. That's okay. Again, this is a gestural sketch, but it's got this kind of beautiful quality to it that's very loose, and it feels like, she's moving, like there's some activity there. It's not a static, kind of stiff academic drawing, right? This is a charcoal that he did. Same, same artist, but, and we, some of you submitted some, either paintings or drawings of faces. And I want you to look at this face, very carefully, okay? And notice, again, this is probably not a really long drawing. This is probably about a 15, 20-minute drawing. But, he sort of abstracted the shapes in the hair, very loosely. And then the only place that he really put a great deal of care about, trying to build any kind of structure is really, on the facial planes themselves. And please notice, okay, you can very clearly see what part is the frontal plane of the face because it's lit up, right? And then he's used the side of the charcoal to sort of block in those areas of the face that begin to move back and away from us, see, which begin to create the side plane of the face. And the thing is, when you're looking at somebody's face, even straight on, probably, I would say, safely around about 90 to 95% of the time, not only are you going to see the front plane, you're going to see both side planes, okay? Some of it, okay? Not all. Not like the head was turned 3/4 or anything, but you're going to get, those side planes on the face. There's very few examples of people, when you're looking at them straight on, that those side planes move back so abruptly that you don't see them, okay? It happens occasionally, but you don't see that very often. For the most part, when you're looking at people, you're usually, straight on as a portrait or trying to draw them. You're going to see both the front plane and the side planes, and more than likely part of the top plane of the head and or some of the lower plane under the jaw. Okay? But you're going to see probably at least minimum three planes in the face. And this is a really beautiful example of, where you're seeing both of the side planes. You're seeing clearly the front plane of the face that's lit up, and then, some indication of maybe the top plane of the head going up under the hair. So, he's done it very simply by just blocking in the tone. Okay?
What's your best guess on the kind of paper he put this on?
If I had to make a guess, it's probably just a regular kind of bond sheet of drawing paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing with a lot of tooth in it, huh?
No. And he probably did this with one of those block or stick, not the real thin sticks of charcoal, but kind of a block of charcoal, compressed charcoal.
Charles, do you think that picture is of the woman leaning against something, or is she lying down on some covers or something?
No, she was probably sitting, and I've drawn this model before. I believe her name is India, no, she's probably like sitting, and has her head tipped over on her shoulder for a longer pose.
Right.
Yeah, so she's probably sitting up, and he just chose to do sort of the head and the shoulders.
Right. Thank you.
Here's another one of those ink sketches again. And again, they have this beautiful sort of loose quality to them. It's really kind of fun and nice. They remind me in many ways a lot of, if you look at Rembrandt and you look at his sketchbook, you see a lot of these very kind of loose, kind of, curly, kind of very fluid lines. in Rembrandt sketchbooks. So, okay, this is Carrie Barkham, and this is more of a academic study. And you know, she's drawing from the Pieta, which was done by Michelangelo, and this is kind of a side view of it, and you know, probably just a smaller scale casting or something of it that she was working with. And, you know, she's just studying, you know, the light and the shadow patterns, you know, on the forms. And again, you know, it's a really nice sort of little study or academic drawing. You know, it's pretty well done. The scale, proportion, you know, things like that feel, you know, fairly accurate. But the light and the shadow patterns and how she sort of just abstracted them and broken them up. Again, sometimes just taking the time, you know, to really look at something, and she's not trying to render it, but she, you know, she wants to kind of find that light dark pattern in there. Probably, you know, from here she might do another drawing or another couple of drawings, really beginning to render and trying to turn form. But my guess is that this drawing is probably about a 20-minute to a half-hour drawing, if I had to make a guess. And then you compare this particular drawing to this drawing, okay? And this one is much looser, you know, more painterly. And again, you know, she's using a medium like a charcoal, and she's laying in blocks of dark areas, and then she's using an eraser to kind of pull out lights, you know, and have this sort of owl emerge, you know, from all the different foliage and things around him, or her. Could be a female owl. Let's see. Yeah, this is one that I did. This is mine over at the Atlanta Artist Center. And again, you know, it's probably like a 5-minute drawing, 5-10-minute drawing at the most. And, you know, again, it's what you're going for is you're trying to just capture sort of the sense of the movement, the weight, where the light, and what the form was doing. Notice that I didn't use a lot of, you know, when I used the pencil, I went around the form of the leg. See? And that gives you sort of a sense of the volume of the leg and the arm and, you know, the rest of the torso. You know, when you lay those lines in there and they're just straight, what you're doing is you're flattening the shape or the form. And, you know, what I keep telling all of you is don't do that. You know, move in the direction of the form with your, you know, with your shading and your line work. And it will help build, you know, this sense of volume to your drawing that you're not going to be able to get otherwise, unless you carefully render, you know, the, you know, all the changes in value. But if you're doing a quick drawing, you don't have time for that, you know. So you want to find something that you can use quickly to begin to tell the viewer of that drawing later on that, oh, this was a rounded form. The other thing I want to point out is notice the, you know, there is an outline around the figure, okay? But notice how it changes, okay? The areas with a lot of light get fairly faint and thin. The areas where there's compression or weight get darker and bolder, right? So I'm varying my line weight to try to tell you, the viewer, you know, what's going on there? You know, what's actually happening in that area of the body? And, you know, and again, being very conscientious about, you know, varying the weight on each side of each of the limbs and the torso. So again, I'm not telling you that it's a flat shape, because if these were equal, what it would do is it would flatten that form out, see? But because this is darker and bolder, that tells you that her abdomen is actually kind of compressed up against the fabric, see? And over here, this being lighter, you know, and not as dark in value, tells you that, okay, you know, the form is rounding and this isn't up against anything. There's no compression there. There's light hitting, you know, this area of the body. And so just little subtle changes, you know, can give, you know, the person looking at the drawing later on a clue as to what was going on there. You know, here's a friend of mine, Charles Walls, and this is a sketch that he did. This is I guess he's playing with this particular pencil. It's I think it's a charcoal pencil of some sort. And it's got a nice quality to it. And Bob, you were asking about the type of paper. And this is, you know, again, you know, this is just like a regular sketch pad with a bond paper in it. And charcoal works very nice on bond paper. It really does. You can get a nice effect with it. The only problem I have with charcoal in a sketchbook is that it transfers to the other side of the page so easily. But, you know, if, you know, let's say that he wanted to keep this drawing and he wanted to keep it pristine, you know, have a can of hairspray or, you know, fixative, you know, and just lightly fix it. And then you could put a slip sheet of like tracing paper or something in there, and that would protect it from transferring to the other side. So, you know, there's, you know, if you work in charcoal and if you want to keep working in charcoal because you like the medium, you know, that's an easy solution. You know, it just, you know, makes life easier when you don't have to deal with your sketchbook kind of turning into a big pile of mush. This is a sketch. And again, you know, I've heard of this woman. She's from China, and I would butcher her name, I'm sure. But this is Catherine Pika, and Catherine is a local model, and she's got a pretty good likeness of Catherine. And from what I understand, not Catherine, but the artist, I guess she's a professor at, I want to say, the Savannah College of Art and Design. She teaches drawing. And again, you know, look at the technique, you know, how she's varying, you know, the line, you know, she's finding edges and losing edges, you know, softening, you know, laying in broad sort of tones and then working back over in directional lines, you know, to, again, you know, not flatten out that shape. And look at the structure of the eye, since you guys like to focus on eyes here. And see the round, the orbit of the eye, how that looks like a ball. And that ball is sitting inside of a socket. See? So again, you know, she's very clearly communicated the structure of the eye. And it doesn't feel like the eye is floating on top of the head. It feels like it's actually integrated, you know, as part of it. See, very clearly. And no, I thought, you know, really, really nice drawing of Catherine. Came across this, which I thought was a beautiful concept and idea. It's a blue heron, and it's, what is it? It's Once in a Blue Heron Moon. And it's a 30 by 30 oil. And obviously, you know, she wasn't sitting there looking at the moon, you know, seeing this. This was something that she conceived and put together. But it's really nicely painted. It's really nicely done. And the frame actually is quite nice because it's kind of a Gothic or Renaissance style frame. I don't know where you get those these days. I'll have to start looking around for those because they have a really nice effect, you know, with that softer curve at the top, you know, and then the rectangular corners. So yeah, I thought that was a really well done painting. Nice, you know, nice ability to draw. You know, the proportions, you know, capture the movement of the bird, and you know, you almost feel the wings moving a little bit, and kind of the bend in the wings. The wings don't feel like they're a flat surface, but they feel somewhat curved. And I think she handled that really well.
Charles, do you think she started out with a dark piece of paper and added the light?
Well, this is oil on Belgian linen. So
Do you think the linen was black to begin with, or did she put a black surface on it?
No, she painted the black in.
Right.
Yeah. She the linen comes in kind of this kind of gray kind of color. It's you know, it's not primed out white. You know, they keep it that kind of gray color because it makes it a nice neutral surface to begin to work on, so you can begin to judge value and color, and you don't have to, you know, prime it anymore. But I'm sure she laid this out, you know, in some kind of line work, and then, you know, began to fill in big blocks, you know, with paint. But it's, you know, it's nicely handled. This is another one of my Facebook friends, John Halsey. And this is a watercolor. John does a lot of oil paintings, but evidently he did a whole series of these, you know, kind of deep woods, you know, watercolors. And, you know, I know a lot of you do watercolor, and, you know, if you take any time really to look at this, it's really, really nicely handled. And look at the change in color temperature, right? From, you know, the side of the bank that's really lit up, which is really over here, to the shadow side over here, and how much warmer the shadows are and how much cooler the light is. And it's a nice play of color and color temperature. Also notice how he, you know, really got a sense of depth, you know, in the, you know, in the painting, you know, by changing the value and the intensity of these greens as they move back, you know, and then letting them get, you know, both, well, not just darker, but there's generally more contrast, you know, in value and in temperature as things move forward, you know, than in the background. So there's less contrast back here, more contrast up here. And so that really helps, you know, pull off that illusion of, you know, creating depth and getting distance. So this is Laurie Woodward. Actually, I need to start with this. Okay. See, that's her initial, you know, sketch. So she's finding the proportions, the angles, you know, and kind of breaking, you know, this face of this coyote down into, you know, more or less simplified planes. And then she works over this, you know, to develop a more complete drawing. And it's really nicely kind of handled. You know, you get a sense of the form, the light, the dark. Let's see. So I'm going to show you. I came across this piece. Now this, a bit of nostalgia, but you know, I talk a lot, you know, about my own personal struggle with flowers, and you know, flowers are really difficult. You know, I mean, for me, they're really one of the harder things to really pull off and do it well. But you know, here's an artist, and I think this was done in 1902, and it was I'm fairly sure it's a female artist, Lois. Um, but look at how sensitive, you know, she is about the shapes and the forms of the flowers and the change in value, not just color, but really in value structure. And she really pulled those flowers off very, very nicely. Where'd my cursor go? Yeah. Yeah, particularly like these peonies down here. Really nicely shaped, you know, and you get a sense of, you know, the change in direction of the different petals and how they make an overall shape or a form. And then the same thing up here. And I'm kind of guessing that this is like cherry blossoms or something like that. You know, up here on these limbs.
Small.
Pardon?
Definitely something smaller than the peonies.
Yeah, yeah. But also it's kind of like a fruit tree.
Right,
You know, it's like a branch.
right.
Yeah. And so yeah, but a totally different form, and just, you know, really nicely kind of delicately handled. And you also get the sense of the time of year, it being spring. You know, because of the blossoms and you know, just even the background here, you know, the blossoming trees back behind the figure. So, you know, it was a nice piece.
So the artist's name is Louise something?
Yeah, I'm going to butcher it, but Abema, Abbema.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her signature, you know, right down here. And I'm guessing she may have been American. You know, but it was kind of around that Victorian period, you know, the end of the Victorian period, and it's done in that kind of Victorian decorative style. But it's really a lovely painting, you know, when you really begin to look at the technique and how she handled, you know, both value and color and, you know, the design of it. It's really, really a nice piece. I'd be happy with that painting, you know.
Amen.
Yeah. Let's see. This is Margaret Dyer, you know, and again, you know, some quick figure sketches, but look how fluid, you know, the form is, and it just, you know, you get a sense of the movement, what's going on there. And she doesn't over detail it, you know, she doesn't put in a lot of extra stuff, you know, she just gets what she needs to get, you know, and then kind of moves on. And oftentimes, you know, that's the thing that makes, you know, drawings more powerful. It's not detail. And, you know, I keep saying this, you know, to all of you, and same thing with your paintings. It's not the details. It's really getting down the shapes, the forms, the values, you know, giving the viewer enough to understand what's going on there and not overworking it. And it really makes, you know, some lovely pieces of art. And when I say that, you know, not all drawings are art, you know. Not all paintings are necessarily, you know, what you would call art. You know, art is when somebody can do something and they do it really well and make it look almost effortless, then it becomes an art, you know, or it becomes art. Now, you know, you know, we have a lot of people attempting to, you know, create art out there, and you know, and that's what they are. They're attempting to create art. You know, they're not there yet. They haven't found that place. You know, they haven't found out who they were and how, you know, what they want to say and how they want to say it. And so that's kind of the struggle, you know, for an artist, is how do you get to that level where the things that you do are done artfully? You know, like this, for example. Okay. You know, it's an experiment. It's playing in the sketchbook. You know, this is a guy that I've looked at his work over the last year or two, and he's just starting. You know, he's playing with like you know, pens, different pens, and colored inks, and you know, just experimenting. You know, with his drawing. You know, would I call this, you know, art? Well, not really. You know, it's an experiment. He's trying to find something there, and you know, a lot of us, you know, are there. I mean, I still make things that I wouldn't call art, because again, you know, they're it's a study. It's on its way to being a piece of artwork, okay? But it's not there yet. This is more of his drawings. And again, you know, his goal here is he's playing with different designs, things like that, but it's really playing with these colored inks and this new toy he got, which is it's almost like a calligraphy pen, you know, but he's doing some nice things with it, you know, and kind of playing with it, experimenting. This in particular, I thought was, you know, a really kind of nice drawing. It almost looks sculptural,
Mhm.
you know, kind of like a wire sculpture. And again, you know, just playing with the pen, you know, learning how to vary the weight, you know, and the thickness of the line. And then he's taken it and he's begun to take it a little bit further, you know, play with some colored inks, different textures, you know, things like that. And see, this begins to look dimensional, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And actually get some sense of form and movement in it. You know, same, you know, pretty much so the same thing with this. You know, you almost feel this, you know, this big overall shape here kind of push forward and, you know, this move backward, right? And so it's like something's, you know, beginning to emerge, kind of come out of the canvas itself. Not so much there, you know, but, you know, I keep encouraging you guys, you know, to play, you know, to doodle, to you know, experiment, you know, with drawing materials, you know, whether that's a ballpoint pen, whether that's a pencil, piece of charcoal, whatever media you have available, you know, just experiment with it. You know, if you work with it enough, you'll begin to get more sensitive about how you use those tools and the pressure and things, and you'll be able to create more interesting drawings in the process. You know, once you really kind of become adept with the tool itself that you're wanting to work with. Okay. I found this pretty interesting. This was on Facebook, and I think this is a woman, and she had gone out to do a little bit of plein air painting. And I'll kind of start there. And you know, so she found herself, you know, some nice rocks out by the water, and you know, she set her easel up, and she's working on watercolor paper. Notice she's got it stretched, you know, on a board and taped, you know, in position, so that as she's working and getting the paper wet, it doesn't buckle and wrinkle. Now you can get what they call watercolor blocks, and so the paper is already stretched on that block, and you can work on that and then trim it off the block, and that's, you know, that's a way of being able to do it and not have to stretch your paper. You know, and generally, if I'm working in watercolor, I'll either work on a more rigid board or I'll work on watercolor paper in a block, because, to take the time to set up, 4 or 5 of these to go out in the field and paint, do some plein air painting during the day. That's a little more effort than I want to personally put into it. And so, to me, just buying a block of watercolor paper is more efficient. And it's not like I do watercolor every day. It's not really the medium I work in most of the time. But there are times, particularly if you're traveling, if you have to get on a plane and go anywhere, that it's really much easier to transport a box of watercolor and some brushes than it is to try to take a paint box with oil paint and stuff like that. And particularly these days, because they won't let you on the plane with any kind of solvent. You can't even put it in the cargo hold, because it's a flammable liquid. And so, a lot of painters, particularly oil painters, things like that, they'll ship their box and their brushes and a lot of their tools. But what they'll do is they'll go somewhere and they'll find a local art store and they'll buy their, the basic paint supplies they need there, just because it's such a hassle to, get that stuff, and move it, on a plane or even on any kind of public transportation. So,
Hey, Charles,
yeah.
is there a tape that works well? I've tried a couple of different kinds of tapes and they sometimes will pull up some of the residue from the paper when you take it off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They've got that blue painter's tape.
Yeah, I tried that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hate that stuff.
No.
It's basically masking tape, and
Yeah.
it really doesn't work very well.
No.
Okay. The best tape that you can get are these large rolls of this gummed paper tape, if you can find it. They use it for packaging and stuff. Now they've got the stuff with like the threads and the fibers and stuff in it. You don't want that. You just want that kind of, it's like brown manila paper bag type, tape. And that stuff is great because,
Don't you have to wet that first?
Yeah. You basically, you're doing a lot of this stuff at home, preparing to go out or to work in the studio. So, you just, if you're planning on going out on a plein air trip, you get a couple of boards that you can stretch your paper on, and, you cut some lengths of this tape, and you want to go corner to corner with it. Okay. Don't do just a short piece in the middle. You want to tape the whole edge.
Right.
But, get you a sponge and a bucket of water, wet the piece of tape down, and, make sure to wet your paper, right? Put it in a tub or something like that and get it, good and wet. And then, take it out of the tub, lay it down on the board, flatten it out, take your gum tape, wet it, tape the edges, and then set it aside and let it dry. Okay. And then do the next piece and, do.
That pulls off easily?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All you have to do basically is just start at the corner and you can just peel it right off. Yeah. It comes off pretty easily. And it's, it will give you, if you paint all the way out to the edge, and paint over the edge of it, it'll still give you a very, very nice, clean, sharp line. In fact, it will give you a cleaner, nicer, sharper line than, any kind of masking tape can ever give you. Okay. It's great stuff, but it is like really difficult to find these days.
One of the tapes that I found is that the acid-free, it's kind of like masking tape, but it's acid-free. It's used when you're for framers. when they mount a watercolor in, do a frame of it inside a mat, and they'll use that tape, that acid-free tape.
Is that gummed paper tape, or is
No,
it
no.
white
This is almost
tape?
it's a white. It's almost like masking tape. It almost feels like masking tape, but it's much smoother.
Yeah.
Than
It's what they call a white artist tape.
right. Yes.
Yeah. The only thing with that is, A, it's kind of expensive.
Yes, that's it.
It is. It's kind of expensive. And it's like, well, and I've got a couple of rolls of it around here. And it's, but I put that down, and then I'm working wet on the edge. And I find with that particular tape, you still get these fuzzy edges when you peel it up, because it doesn't really seal down to the paper that well. And, maybe that's just the way I'm using it or something, but yeah, it's good. Now when I'm framing, and I want to do something that's archival, that I don't have to worry about the tape and the acidity in the tape damaging the drawing, or the watercolor or whatever I'm positioning in there. That stuff's great, because it is acid free, so it won't transfer into the drawing, and it won't it doesn't get like so sticky that when you peel it off it starts tearing the paper surface. Even like 20-30 years later, you can still take it off pretty easily. And it's great for that. Okay, it has its place, it has its purpose. But yeah, for masking for a watercolor, yeah, the other thing is when it gets wet, it doesn't seem to hold as well, for like stretching paper. It will hold it, but yeah. Sometimes it will pull up, like John was mentioning, it's like, how do you get a tape that will, keep things stuck down? Because when you get really wet, it will let go in areas, and then your paper will begin to kind of get a little funky and bend on you. Anyhow, so this lady went out to go plein air painting, and she's in a nice spot. Now notice where the light is, okay? And how the light is showing on the rocks. And there's a definite cast shadow, and the light's coming from behind her, right?
Right.
Because the shadow's being cast onto these rocks, right? So, as she progresses, through the day, and she only gave us a couple of shots. Let's see, where do I want to go? Yeah, let's go here. Okay, so, she's beginning to, lay in some initial colors and shapes, and getting some lights and darks established, right? And doing a very nice job, very kind of loose. You can tell that the paper is somewhat wet, and the watercolor's going down, and you get some of this granular feel to the paint. And that's the thing about watercolors. Different colors have like different textures. Some like this brown lay down very, very smooth, very nice. And then like these blues and these, when you get this blue, mix it into other colors and things, it gets this sort of granular feel to it. And only certain colors will do that. And you have to kind of work with the watercolors that you've got and kind of find out, how they react. But this is this is pretty typical of what watercolors will do, when you're laying them down. And it's kind of the beauty of the medium, actually. Yeah. So anyway, so she's got her initial sort of block in, and working along. And this is kind of where she ended up at. And it's a really nice study, and it's pretty true to where she started with, and how the light was hitting just the top of the rocks. She probably, if it were me, I'd be a little bit critical and say, okay, she could have pushed, some of the values down, in the shadow areas a little bit further, And that would have made sort of the feeling, more dramatic, more the way that she was actually seeing it when she started off. See those overall values, if you squint your eye down, quite a bit stronger.
Right.
Anyway, this is where, as you can see, the light is beginning to move on her.
Mhm.
So
Do you think she took a photograph of the initial look?
yeah, I'm sure she did. See,
Right.
and here's where she sort of ended, and see all the lights gone.
Right.
It's just totally gone away. And that's that's plein air painting. That's what happens.
Right.
And my guess is for the time of day that she was painting, she probably had no more than about a half hour to 45 minutes to paint this. Before it like totally changed and just everything was gone. And so, that's one of the things you have to deal with, when you're doing plein air in particular, because, you're dealing with the limitation of the time frame, and the sun moving and the light changing. And particularly early mornings and in the late afternoon, evening, the sun is going to move very quickly. Middle of the day, it's not very interesting because everything's kind of lit up equally. But, you got about a 4-hour window, in the middle of the day where the light doesn't move, but you don't have any interesting shadows or interesting color because there's too much light and it just kind of blows everything out. But, if you, and this is kind of where one of the tricks of plein air. When I do a plein air painting, I'll go somewhere and I'll find myself a spot. And, the first day, I may not even paint. I may just sit there and I might take a sketchbook and I might just sketch, and do some drawings and kind of block in, kind of like the lady did with the Pika, find the big masses of what's in light, what's in shadow, and begin to try to discover and figure out what that pattern, light dark pattern. And then I'd come back, on another time, maybe the next day or something, around about the same time, but this time I would be prepared and I'd have a good idea of the direction of the light and about how long I would have to get, what I want done. So I could move fairly quickly and get the really important parts in and not get caught up in futz with a lot of little details. And that usually, works out. But, when I do plein air painting, it's not unusual for me to go back to the same place 4 or 5 times, because really it's about that 4th or 5th time that you're going back that you're really getting to the point where you kind of know it, and you kind of know what to expect, and how the light is going to shift. Obviously, weather, plays a big part in that, whether it's a clear day or a very cloudy day or a rainy, overcast day, it can totally change the mood of a place. But, just becoming familiar, with it. It's just like with a portrait, you can't just start off, painting somebody and expect to capture them on the first round. It usually takes a good, like 8 to 10 drawings, maybe a couple of paintings before you really, really begin to understand the structure of their face and the form. And, at that point, then you could probably really accomplish, a pretty accurate portrait because you'd have a good sense of who they are, the structure of the face, the proportions, things like that. So, in that sense, landscapes and portraits are, pretty much so, very similar. And, speaking of portraits, I pulled this because, this, I think it's a fairly young guy, and he's just starting off doing, portraits. And he posted this on Facebook asking the question, and basically some advice. And so, what he's doing is he's creating what I call a Frankenstein. Okay. And the reason I call it a Frankenstein is, everybody know the story of Frankenstein, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's a monster.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Put together with pieces.
Right. It's put together with pieces, right? So, an arm here, a leg here, and so, so it's, Dr. Frankenstein trying to assemble something, and bring it back to life, right? So, this artist is doing the same thing. He's taking a variety of photos, okay? In this case, he's got, the kids, right? And what are they doing?
Crouching.
Right. Yeah, they're sitting or crouching down. He's crouching. I think these two are actually sitting. I wish we could get the rest of the photo, but no luck there. But they're probably sitting, down on this bridge, right? So the angle at which this is photographed is kind of low, right? The person taking this had to get down real low to take this picture of the kids. And how do you know that? Well, look at the kind of forced perspective, of the bridge itself. The railings are way up above our eye level, right? And so the camera was pretty low down taking this, right? Okay. And it's a great picture, it's got a lot of expression in the faces, the composition, this little, I think it's a little boy, kind of, holding his sister and kind of reaching across, the movement, of that hand. I mean, it's really a nicely composed photo, and it would make, a good reference, for a painting, right? So, he's taking this photo, and then he's taking a photo of the parents, right? And so, it's a man and his wife, and the lighting is totally different. Totally different. Yeah. See, if you look at this, the lighting on this is very flat, right? And why? Because it was taken with a flash, right?
It's also indoors versus outdoors.
Right. Yeah, it's indoors. It was taken with a flash. So you see, there's really no, light or shadow really to kind of create any sense of form, right? And when you go back and you look at the kids, lighting is very different, isn't it?
Right.
The lighting's high above, to the right, coming down, hitting, the tops of their heads, their cheeks, things like that, kind of moving in a downward direction like this, right? So you see the lighting is totally different, okay? So if you wanted to combine those two images together and try to get them to have some kind of unified feeling, you either have to flatten out all the shadows and things on these kids' faces, in which case you would lose a lot of the expressive quality that they have, and or you've got to kind of fake in the light and shadow on these people's faces to make them feel kind of like they're the same, in the same place at the same time, right? If you paint them pretty much so true to the way you see them right there, it's going to be kind of a really awkward looking painting. And it's not anything that somebody could really put their finger on right off, the very beginning, but your eye will pick it up. Your eye will pick it up and something won't feel right about it, okay? And I've seen this happen so many times with, people just beginning to do, portraiture and things like that, or painting for that matter of fact, where they'll take a variety of things and try to combine them together into a painting. and the lighting sources and things are totally different. And then the lighting just comes up making like no sense in the painting. So that's something you have to consider. Okay.
Hey, Charles.
Yes.
And then if you recall when Saran was showing his
Sure.
painting, of his grandchildren.
Right.
I told him if I commented then, I had the feeling that they weren't together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And well, the interesting thing is though, he actually had a photo of the two of them sitting there. He was pretty much so. He was somewhat true to the photo, as far as the position and the lighting and everything was there. But it's like he was using two totally different approaches to painting each of the faces.
Right.
One he had very sharp and very kind of precise and clear, and the other was kind of fuzzy. And that's what we kept talking about is, you got to go back and kind of treat them the same. Either soften one up or sharpen the other one up, but you can't have both. So anyway, getting back to this, he was asking for advice, on what to do. And, people were making some comments, and this is his initial sketch. Okay. And as a concept or an idea, okay. And this is done on a like an iPad or, whatever. So it's not on a piece of paper. Okay. And, in some ways, there's an advantage to working digitally like this because you can modify it, right? You could take this sketch and put it into Photoshop and or this program, and you could probably either decrease the size of the heads here or increase the size of the heads here if you needed to. But generally, the question was about the composition. You've got kind of a nice composition going on here. It's unfortunate that he didn't use the arm moving across, right? To, again, kind of complete and unify the overall design and keep the eye moving. That would have been a good element. The other thing is the position on the page. And I don't really know how he's going to end up cropping this, but if this was going to be your canvas, I probably would have enlarged those figures by 15 or 20%. Because what's the purpose of having all of this negative space around them, right? Does it add anything compositionally to it? Not really. Now, again, if he would have if he kept it at this scale and moved them up, say the father's head to here, so he had enough room, to get that arm to come across, then okay, maybe at that scale that would work. But I would probably compose it where it's more of a vertical painting than a horizontal painting, at that point. So, this is one of the challenges, in trying to do something like this. There's a lot to think about. And, I'm sure that he's going to go back in and probably do several versions of this drawing. And, my comment was that it feels like the parents' heads are too close and down, on top of the children. And I would probably like move the mother's chin up to about here and leave a little more space in there, open it up a little bit so it's not quite so tight. And again, I probably would have added that arm moving across because that was a really good compositional element that, he eliminated. So that was my thoughts. Anybody got any comments about that?
Because the little boy in the front on the left is his head too big compared to the other two children next to him?
Well, in looking at the proportions of the kids' heads and things like that, yeah, the scale is off here. considerably. This head is actually larger than the mother's face. And so he needs to kind of either reduce the size of this and or to enlarge the size of the parents' faces. They're adults. This kid is maybe 5, 6 years old, right?
Right,
You know, the little girl's probably like what, 3 or 4?
right,
Yeah. And then I'm saying, you know, he's probably like 9 or 10,
right.
you know. And he's got the bigger head out of any of them, right? If you measure it, okay. And so, and that's something he's off with, you know. This kid's head's actually smaller than this one, and that's not the case. So yeah, you'd have to enlarge and really look at the proportions of each of these very
Charles,
carefully.
Charles, I'm wondering why the margin of the drawing on the left-hand side is larger than the margin on the right-hand side. It doesn't seem to be in the middle of the page. It's like shifted to the right, the
Yeah.
whole group.
Yeah, and I'm actually okay with that. You know,
Okay.
I'm not a big advocate of, you know, plonking them right in the middle. Okay.
Oh, huh.
Yeah,
Interesting.
if you want to make it static, you know, you just move it to the center. Okay. But I mean, there's bigger problems with it, and again, you know, how he's going to end up cropping it. You know, he may not keep all this space over here. You know, he may make it a more vertical painting, right? In the end, I'm not really sure. You know, I wouldn't do it as a horizontal. You know, really, there's no really good reason to do that in this particular case. So this, to me, you know, I think it lends itself more to a vertical format. Again, you know, if he enlarged the size of the parent's head and brought this kid's head up a little bit bigger, and then move the parents up just a little bit, and then move the whole thing up so you can get the arm in, you know, that's kind of my, you know, my take on it. You know, so there's lots of things that you could do, but, you know, to his credit, okay, you know, what I want to say is, you know, he's taking on something that's really difficult. You know, it's not going to be an easy to actually pull off and make it look credible. So you know, I have to give him credit for wanting to take on a challenge like that. It's not going to be easy. But number 2 is, you know, he's going through the process. You know, he's still kind of at the formative stages of, you know, beginning to develop his concepts, his ideas, and, you know, he's got a good composition, you know, starting here. He just needs to probably do another 15 or 20 thumbnails. You know, again, playing with the scale, position, really figuring out, nailing down, you know, what, you know, how he wants to approach this. And again, you know, working in a digital format, you know, with these sketches and things, he can do them pretty quickly, and he doesn't have to redraw all this stuff, you know. At this point, he can take it and he can enlarge certain things and move things around. And that's something that you can't do with a traditional drawing, you know, on paper. You have to do another one, you know. Doing it digitally, you know, you can play with it, you can manipulate it, you know, until you figure out the composition. You know, and so in that case, you know, this is a good approach. You know, it's a good tool. He just has to begin to use it and play with it, and try to be more accurate, you know, with how he's doing things. So, anyway, speaking of portraits, this is a good friend of mine. This is Gordon Schreiber, who is well, he's an actor. He's been in a good number of films now. You know, He's an Atlanta-based actor. He also does theater and performance. But Gordon, close to my age, you know, probably 60 now. He's got an interesting face. Been a male model in Atlanta for, at least 30 years. But this is Rose Franzen, who came to Atlanta with one of the Portrait Society events. And she did a demo, and he modeled for her. And this is her drawing of him. And, you know, for a drawing that took, you know, 45 minutes, maybe, really got a good likeness of him. Okay. But again, you know, the thing I want to point out to you, and, you know, some of this is very loose, you know, very quick, gestural. And look at the contrast, though, between these very quick gestural lines and then how carefully studied the form of the face is. See? And it really set up a nice contrast, you know. I mean, she's not trying to fool you into, you know, saying this isn't a drawing or anything. You know, she's making a very clear statement. No, this is a drawing, you know, of this person. It's a sketch. But then she gets in here and she, you know, she gets very, very accurate, you know, with her values. Also, look at the planes of the face. You know, his head is slightly turned, right? So you clearly get the side plane here. You get the front plane, which is being lit up right in here. And then look, you get the other side plane moving back to the ear, right? And so you can clearly see what's on the side of the face, what's on the front of the face, cheekbone, right? Yeah. And she was very, very good about, you know, structuring that drawing so that it really clearly showed those three different planes of the face. And you also actually see the fourth plane, which is really the underside of the jaw, right? Down to the neck, right? And what does that do? See, that gives us a clear sense that the subject was sitting up above our eye level, right? And that we're kind of looking upward at him. Everybody kind of get that? So she, you know, she set it up. She gave you all those clues as to where she was and how she was seeing him, and, you know, all the different shapes and forms in his head. And she got that basic underlying, you know, structure to build, you know, all of the features of him. Now, when you look at this, again, you know, look at the eyes. Okay, and let me blow those up. You know, look at the eyes and the nose, and even the mouth. Okay, you see, none of that feels like it's just floating on top of that head, does it? It all feels like it's part of it, and it feels like each of these features actually move around the face, right? Look at the line of the mouth. See, and how it wraps, you know, around this orbit. See, with a round ball that it's sitting on top of. And, you know, we've talked about that quite a bit. You know, the orbit of the mouth. See, it's not flat across here. You know, it's rounded, it curves. Same thing with the nose, you know, very clearly delineated the bottom plane of the nose versus, you know, the top plane, and then the two side planes of the nose. See, you get, you know, a value on this side, you know, a value on this side, you know, lighter value on the top plane, and then the darker shadow is underneath. So again, it tells you where the light is coming from which is up above, and again, coming up above and from the right and downward toward the left. And so it's hitting the cheekbones, the top plane of the nose, a slight bit of the cheekbone on the other side of the face, and then really kind of all across the forehead. See? Same thing with the chin. See? You know, the ball of the chin is, the highlight is over here, you know, high and to the right. And again, it falls off and it's a rounded form. Remember? Think of that demonstration that Carl Nast made, right? With the core shadow. That's it right there. See, the lighting is just coming from the opposite direction. Okay, it's the exact same thing. Okay. Same thing with the cheekbone. You know, look at the core shadow on the cheekbone. You know, going back into what we call reflected light. See, you know, and you can see it very clearly. You know, light on this side, core shadow. You know, shadow and reflected light. Right? Same thing here. Light, right? Highlight, core shadow, and then shadow and reflected light, you know, behind that. And you see, you know, she's used these same concepts, these same ideas, and she was looking for those. She knew to look for those because she knew that she was going to have to use those to be able to create this sense of volume and form in the drawing. You know, if you don't see those, or you don't find them, you know, you're going to flatten out that shape. You know, look at the eye socket. See, everything in that eye socket falls into some sort of shadow, right? You know, there's no direct light in there other than like really like right here on the bottom lid of the eye, maybe just a touch on the upper eyelid and the highlight in the eye. Everything else is pushed back, you know, into a shadow to some degree or another. And the same thing, this whole eye and the whole eye socket, again, is in shadow. So, you know, she's very effectively taken his eyes and she's sunken them back into the eye sockets so that they feel like they're actually sitting in those eye sockets and they're not sitting there floating on top of the face. So she anchored them in there and did a really nice job at doing it. So does that make any sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a good friend of mine. This is Mr. Shane McDonald. Yeah. And there's a beautiful little watercolor sketch. In this case, you know, he did the drawing first, and then he kind of splashed in some color over it, you know. But it works, you know, very nicely. It kind of captures a sense of the mood, the light, you know, where the light was coming from, where the shadows were falling. So, and this is probably no more than, you know, probably an hour, you know, drawing and color. You know, this is a fairly typical drawing for Shane. He has he's one of these people that has sort of this unique ability. He can be very lineal, and he can draw very well in a lineal approach, or he can be very tonal. Okay, and this is a more tonal approach to his drawing. And again, you know, look at the sense of volume and the form. And again, how many planes do you see on this face? Here, you clearly see 3 planes, right? Front plane, the 2 side planes. You know, we're kind of at this man's eye level, right? We're not up above him. We're not down below him. We're kind of like right at his eye level. And so we're really not getting a lot of the underside of the jawline. We're not really getting a lot of the top of the head, right? So we're seeing just the three planes, you know, two side planes and front plane. And again, you know, a nice sense of structure. You know, this whole side of the face, the side plane of the face moves backward. You know, this one moves backward. That leaves that front plane, you know, to more or less be not quite directly in front of us, but, you know, slightly tipped away from us. You know, but really a nice sense of form. So, you know, the actual structures, and again, you know, the eyes, they sit into those eye sockets. So, you know, very successfully. They don't feel like they're just stuck on top. This is a drawing that he's working on, or was working on. And, you know, and this is a charcoal. And as you can see, you know, the drawing over here to the right, you know, he's more or less finished with, right? And he's beginning to develop the one on the left. And see, you know, all of the outline has been laid in. He's beginning to lay in, you know, the different values and tones and soften it back. So, until he gets, you know, the end result, you know, which is, you know, a finished figure in which, you know, he's actually turning form on. So, and, you know, if you look in this area of the legs and things, notice the volume of the leg and how round it feels. See, both of them. Yeah. He's very successful at, you know, changing those values, you know, and turning that form, getting that sense of volume around this there. Really nicely done. This is one of his quicker, probably, you know, probably a 3 to 5 minute drawing. Okay. Again, you know, he doesn't, at this point, you know, he's not really trying to turn form. You know, he's just getting in, where's the light? Where's the shadow? You know, what's the shape of the leg? Okay, you've got this foot coming forward with some foreshortening. You know, you've got this leg kind of moving to the side. Again, somewhat foreshortening, not as much, say it's the foot here, right? And then, you know, he's pushing the torso and shoulders and head back, see? And look at the size relationship of the feet that are closer to you versus the size of your head, which is, you know, further away, right? In many cases, you know, when people you know, take on a challenge like this, you know, they get it wrong by making the head way too big and making the feet way too small. And see, in this drawing, you very clearly get the sense of depth, you know, and he's pushed her hips and her shoulders backward because he's reduced the size of them in relationship to the legs, which are closer to him, right? And so it gives you this sense of depth in the drawing, and you have a good understanding of what's going on there. Okay. You know, same thing here. Now this is Sherry McGraw, you know, and she's got a very kind of lineal quality to her work. And just, you know, look at the, you know, the use of line, very kind of fluid. Now, I'm familiar with Sherry's paintings, and she's an excellent painter, you know. You know, with her drawings, you know, to me, even though this is a very nice drawing and she's indicated some form on the torso and gotten some nice light and shadow in here, the line work doesn't help in this case because it kind of flattens the drawing out. Because again, you know, she did this very quickly, but she didn't think about, you know, where the shadow and light were and varying those lines. So, for example, okay, in looking at this, if she would have increased the weight or the darkness of this line and reduced the darkness of the line on the other side, she would have gotten a sense of a lot more volume, in that drawing. And just a simple little change. See, all she would have had to have done, even at this stage, is maybe just take like like her finger or, a stump, and just run along this line, just to blur it and soften it a little bit, and take some of that charcoal off. And again, she would have gotten a lot more of a sense of the roundness and the volume than she did. And so it's just little things like that. Same thing with the arm. See, again, the lines are kind of equal on both sides, right? Treated very much so the same way. And again, if she would have really emphasized, this outline, on the back of the arm here, and then maybe the underside here, she would have begun to get a suggestion that this is not a flat shape, that it's actually a rounded form, okay? Without even putting in, all of the change in value, the lights and darks, on the interior. Just with the change of the weight of those two lines, she could have suggested that this is a rounded form. Okay? And so, when I talk to you about slowing down, it's not a race. It's not get down as much as you can. It's really more about slow down, look, figure it out, and make a statement. Put down a line, put it down once, okay? And you may not get it exactly where you want it, and that's okay. Put it down once, leave it alone, okay? If you got the statement you want, like this side of the rib cage is in light and that hits in light, then move on, move on to the next thing, to the other side, and put that other side of the rib cage in and make sure to say, okay, this is in shadow, all right? And I needed a bit heavier line to attach a value to. And your drawings will start becoming a lot more effective, and begin to get that sense of volume, whether you get back in there and, can add the value or not. So.
Charles,
Yeah.
could this just be her style? If you notice the head is what I see is incomplete.
Yeah.
And some things are incomplete, and maybe that's the way she prefers to exhibit her art, is with lines if it's drawing. So.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a lot of her work, and this isn't really what you would consider a finished drawing for her. It's a quick figurative sketch. So again, this is probably no more than a 10 or a 15-minute drawing. Okay. Now, that being said, she's a wonderful artist. She really is. She does some beautiful work. Some beautiful plein air, beautiful figures, things like that. She's a very, very good painter. And that's not saying that this is a bad drawing or anything like that. But like any other piece of artwork, you can always make it better. There are things that you could do to improve it, right? And, she would be considered, a pretty masterful artist, at this stage of her career. So.
Well, this is incomplete, right? This is not her finished.
Yeah.
You said it was just a few minutes.
Right.
And
yeah. But even within those few minutes, and what I'm trying to emphasize to each and every one of you is, within that same amount of time, if she would have thought about that at that moment and made those statements, she could have made this a much more complete drawing and given you much more information by just, slowing down and thinking about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I see.
Believe me, I'm, you know, a lot of drawings, that I do, at these life figure sketches and things, I go back and I start looking at those, and I'll sit and look at those things for 20, 30 minutes afterward. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I could have done this, or maybe I really needed to do this, and figuring that out. And it's like the more that you look at your drawings and figure out what it is that you wanted to say and how you would go about saying it, next time when you get a live model in front of you, you're going to be more conscientious about how you lay that line down, and and you'll, well, you'll improve, you'll improve that drawing, and you'll become more efficient. You can do less and say more with it. So it's always the struggle of, how do I get better at, what I'm doing? How do I improve my craft a little bit? And, and in drawing, it's all about looking and seeing, and then what you do with that tool. How do you manipulate that tool and use it effectively to get the idea across, right? That you wanted to get across. Okay. Anyhow, that's about all I got for you guys. Anybody got any comments? Anything they need to share? Anything we want to talk about before we go away and go eat lunch?
It kind of reminds me of golf in a way, in the fact that when you step up to hit the golf ball, there are 10 gazillion things you're supposed to remember before you hit the ball.
Right.
Just like when you step up in front of your sketch pad or your easel or whatever your medium happens to be that day, there's 10,000 things that you got to remember to make it something happen. And so when you can finally eliminate that 10,000 things that you're supposed to remember, then it becomes easier.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, when they start becoming automatic and you don't have to consciously think of them. Yeah. Yeah. And there's only one way to get there, folks. Guess what that is?
Practice.
Keep trying.
Draw.
You got to make a lot of ugly drawings first. You got to fill up a lot of sketch pads and just make a lot of marks, okay? And that's how you learn. Yeah. That's it. So, and like I said, anybody, we can all sit here. We can look at Rembrandt's drawings. We can look at Leonardo da Vinci's drawings. We could look at Giotto's drawings, Ang, Degas. Now, Degas would be hard because, he had a way of putting it all together. And if you really want to look at a really well-rounded draftsman, Degas would, if you could draw like anybody in the world, okay, Degas would be a good model to go follow, okay? Because he really had it kind of all going on. And there's other artists out there as well, but if you really want to emulate somebody, Degas would be a good one. But any of those old masters you can look at and you can see where, they could have done things a little differently to make that drawing or that painting better. There's never been anything out there that's ever been done that's been perfect. Never. I don't care how good you are. So, it's just one of those things. And, we all hope to get better, as time goes on. So. All right, anybody else? No?
I'll try to send you some things. I sent them, the other art instructor taught me how to send yesterday. And I did send the items to her.
Mhm.
But it seems like I just can't get them to you. I don't understand. But
Okay.
she did have me write down the instructions too, but it seemed like I just can't get them to you. So I'll keep trying to see if you get them by 2 o'clock.
Okay. All right. It should be fairly simple. I mean, are you on a Mac or are you on a PC?
I'm just on the, I'm on my phone.
Oh, you're on your phone.
Yeah.
All right. So your drawings are in your photos, right?
Right, they're in my photos.
Okay. So here's what you do. You know, you can do it one of two ways. All right. You can either go to your email program and open up your email program and then start a new message, right? You know, to me, and put my email address and a title in, you know, a headline. For some reason, they get really upset when you don't have a headline in there or a subject. And then somewhere on there, there's a little paperclip kind of symbol.
Right.
Yeah, that, and then, you know, that's to add an attachment. And you can bring up or follow that to your photos and then select the photos you want to attach to.
Okay, maybe I've been pushing send and not the attachment, so maybe that's it.
Oh, well.
But the other way she told me was to go in google.com. I went to google.com. I even wrote it down and put in your email.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just don't, and attach the picture and send.
Now, or is it, you're going to Google, like Gmail, right?
Yeah, Google Gmail.
Yes, Gmail. Okay, yeah. So you're opening up Gmail and then doing basically what I told you to do, which is you start a new email, and then you have to go put your attachments and make those attachments, and then you send it.
Okay, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, but you one mistake that a lot of people make is, you know, they'll select their photos, right? And depending on the size of the photos, it may take a little bit of time to upload it.
Yeah.
You know, to the email. So you got to make sure that everything is there and showing up and attached before you send it. Okay? Because if you send it before everything is attached, they may not come through.
All right.
Yeah, I'll get your email, but it won't have all the attachments to it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's technology, fun stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, folks. Anyway, happy Friday. You know, hopefully we'll see you back here this afternoon. If you want to bring your margaritas and your martinis and stuff like that, you know, that's fine. I'll still be working, so I can't do that. I'll have my cup of tea or coffee, and we'll see you about 2 o'clock. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Stay warm.
Okay. Good luck.